Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Yunko Tade. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines across the continent. After 17 months of a devastating civil conflict in Sudan, US President Joe Biden calls on the world to stop arming the warring generals during his farewell address to the UN General Assembly. The government in the DRC frees over 1,500 prisoners detained in the notorious Makala prison. It comes weeks after an attempted jailbreak from the same facility led to the deaths of 131 prisoners. People in Brazzaville hold their noses as rubbish piles up in the streets thanks to a strike by waste collectors that has lasted more than a week. The workers walking off the job over pay. US President Joe Biden is calling on all countries around the world to stop arming the warring generals in Sudan, more than 17 months into the conflict there. Biden made the appeal during his farewell address to the UN General Assembly. It comes just a day after the US leader and Vice President Kamala Harris hosted Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the president of the United Arab Emirates, at the White House on Monday. The UAE has itself been widely accused of arming the Rapid Support Forces. Our regional correspondent Olivia Bizo has more.
During their discussions, US President Biden and UAE President Zayed both expressed their concern about the growing humanitarian situation in Sudan. Since the war broke out in April of last year, tens of thousands of people have been killed, millions of people have been displaced, and a famine has now been declared. But these discussions come amid growing scrutiny over the UAE's alleged role in the conflict. The Emirates has been accused of supporting the RSF by providing them with arms, with ammunition, with drones, and even with intelligence. The Emirates has also reportedly opened a hospital in neighbouring Chad in order to treat RSF soldiers crossing the border. Now, this alleged support continues despite an arms embargo having recently been extended by the UN Security Council, although that embargo has long been criticised for being ineffective. Now, on Wednesday, a separate meeting will be held as part of the UN General Assembly that will focus purely on the humanitarian needs in Sudan. According to the UN, the country has received less than 50% of the aid that it needs. However, the escalating situation in Lebanon is going to likely divert attention and resources away from Sudan.
Well, as we've been mentioning, the conflict in Sudan has triggered the world's largest displacement crisis. 10.7 million people have been uprooted from their homes, including 9 million displaced internally. The increasing numbers of Sudanese migrants are now being found in and around Calais here in France at a Doctors Without Borders special day care centre for migrants who are minors. The aid organisation says at times 90% of its visitors are teenagers from Sudan. Clarisse Fortuné reports.
Calais, port city, northern France. Nowadays, better known for camps like this than for its beachfront sites. New home for 1,000 migrants of various nationalities. But today, they're mostly migrants from Sudan, fleeing violence in their home country. And many of them are minors, with one objective, to go to the UK. Like Hassan, 16 years old. His journey from Sudan to France took him 3 months.
We tried to go to England by climbing on trucks, but the police stop us. Sometimes they beat us too.
Teenagers like Hassan are increasingly coming to Europe. At this special daycare for Doctors Without Borders, sometimes 90% of the visitors are from Sudan.
They often encounter violence in Calais, also on the beach when they want to cross the channel by boat. If they trust us, they will tell us what happened during the journey from Sudan to Calais.
In Sudan, more than 10 million people have fled because of the war. About 8 million of them went mainly to Egypt and Chad. So far this year, more than 4,000 Sudanese have applied for asylum in the European Union.
The European Union says it had expected Tunisia to investigate allegations that police there have beaten and raped migrants. It follows reports put out by the British newspaper The Guardian last week, accusing Tunisia's National Guard of committing widespread sexual violence against vulnerable migrant women bound for Europe. The allegations have put the bloc's migration deal with the North African nation under further scrutiny. The pact that pledges respect for human rights is worth hundreds of millions of euros and offers Tunisia economic support in exchange for a clampdown on irregular migration to the EU. Next, Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso are set to receive telecoms and surveillance satellites from Russia after the four countries signed a deal on Monday. The partnership with Russia's space agency is hoped to strengthen all three countries' response to natural disasters. It's the latest evidence of strong ties between Russia, Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso. The three countries, currently run by juntas, have been, in recent years, turning away from European allies and looking instead to the Kremlin for military support to contain Islamist insurgents. We're going to focus on one hostage that was held by jihadists in Mali for years now. Geko van Deventer, originally from South Africa, was captured in Libya in 2017 before being transferred to Al-Qaeda's Mali faction, the JNIM, where he was kept in the desert for 7 years. He spoke to France 24. Take a look.
Geko van Deventer speaks regularly about his time as a hostage at these conferences. He was captured by a gang in 2017 in Libya, and the South African government refused to pay his ransom.
Then they sold me to Al-Qaeda in Mali through their family and tribal connections. Because the leader of Al-Qaeda was in Libya and had worked for Gaddafi.
He spent 4 harrowing days travelling by car to Mali.
You climb up these huge sand dunes, and then you think you're going to see the sea. Completely wild, no cars anywhere. And you go up and up, thinking you're going to see the sea, and then another dune, all sand. Sometimes the sand was icy, and I didn't have any shoes on.
He was then held captive by Tuaregs for 6 years, north of Tessalit near the Algerian border. He explains how he was punished one day for wasting his water ration.
My punishment was to be shackled from 3 p.m. in the afternoon to 10 a.m. in the morning.
For 8 months, right?
Yes, for 8 months.
But his capturers demanded a ransom to liberate him.
We just wanted to raise money. And then they told us we had to raise just 5 million euros.
The Algerian government, who freed Geko, assures no ransom was paid, and since December 2023, he lives in the quiet town of Swellendam. He claims to have had no issue reintegrating.
The biggest thing is, in a hostage situation, is that you have to accept that you're a hostage. If you're not going to accept it, you're going to fight. I'm not a hostage, I'm not a hostage. You're mentally blocking yourself from taking the next step to survival. You have to do that mind shift. Otherwise, you're not going to come out in a sane. You'll become crazy.
He says he doesn't want to write a book. Geko doesn't want to be a victim, rather a survivor, and he hopes to use his experience to help counter-terrorism units around the world.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the government has freed over 1,500 prisoners detained in the notorious Makala prison in the capital, Kinshasa. The mass liberation follows an attempted jailbreak earlier this month, which led to the deaths of 131 prisoners. Emmett Livingstone in Goma has more.
This weekend, emaciated prisoners streamed out of Kinshasa's central prison after being freed. Some jumped for joy, but others were barely able to walk due to the festering open wounds on their arms and legs. A few of the prisoners were carried out in wheelbarrows. Known informally as Makala, the prison has become a byword for inhumane detention conditions in DR Congo. But the sight of the agonised prisoners still caused a shock in the country. DR Congo's Justice Minister ordered the release of 1,685 ill prisoners in a televised spectacle over the weekend in a bid to tackle overcrowding. The move came after 131 inmates lost their lives in an attempted jailbreak earlier this month, when many of the victims suffocated to death in a crush.
The head of state took pity on you. Therefore, he gave me the power to free you. Do you understand? Yes, it's to enable the government action plan to be implemented. We are decongesting the prisons and rehabilitating them all.
Justice Minister Constant Mutamba had promised to reduce overcrowding in Congolese prisons almost immediately after taking office in June. Makala, which was designed in the colonial era for about 1,500 prisoners, currently holds about 12,000. The government has admitted that the overcrowding contributed to the large death toll earlier this month. According to rights groups, most of the inmates are being held in pre-trial detention. Many struggle to access food and healthcare once inside.
17 people have been killed in floods that have gripped Cameroon's far north. It comes after weeks of torrential rain that have lashed the area. The United Nations says around 200,000 people have been affected by the floods. Over 8,600 homes have been destroyed and thousands of hectares of crops submerged. Our correspondent Indria Aku has this report.
Whole streets submerged underwater. The town of Yagwa has been in water for several weeks. Torrential rains have washed away everything on their path, including this bridge, which is almost a century old. More than 200,000 people, mostly women and children, have been forced to leave their homes, seeking refuge in makeshift camps like this one. Families like Talita's, a 57-year-old widow who lives in this tent with 47 other people who have also lost everything.
We lost fields, plates, mattresses, goats, sheep, pigs, everything, everything. Even our clothes are in there.
While it continues to rain, volunteers are hard at work. This group sent by the Red Cross is busy building latrines. They want to prevent a health crisis from adding to the humanitarian disaster these people are already experiencing.
We are afraid of epidemics. We don't know who will come with an infectious disease. So we have to be very careful. And we are in the rainy season, which is the ideal breeding ground for cholera.
More than 2 weeks after these unusual floods, Cameroonian authorities have come with relief to the victims. Several tons of bedding and basic necessities came in from the capital, Yaoundé. This aid, eagerly awaited by the victims, is distributed under the supervision of the Cameroonian Minister of Territorial Administration.
12 divisions have been affected by the floods, including the Mayo-Danai and the Logone and Chari divisions. In total, we've spent almost 1,900 million in less than a week to help all those affected.
A little consolation for the victims of the devastating floods, which have claimed at least 17 lives and affected more than 200,000 people in the far north region of Cameroon.
Brazzaville, the capital of the Republic of Congo, is drowning under mounds of rubbish. For over a week, the city streets have been engulfed with waste because rubbish collectors from Aveda, the company responsible for waste disposal, are on strike. Brazzaville's residents are growing increasingly frustrated by the piles of rubbish. Emma Livingstone reports.
Every morning as he walks out into the alley, Christian Koudela finds himself faced with a pile of rubbish.
We're almost 2 weeks in. And now, the fire we've set here is giving off smells that are more than nauseating. It's painful and disturbing.
Brazzaville, whose inhabitants used to call it the Green City for its cleanliness, is now nearly unrecognizable. Rubbish is heaped up on the pavements in mounds that can reach up to several meters high. The piles of waste are the result of a strike among rubbish collectors in the city.
We are demanding our rights, our 2 salaries, the month of July and the month of August. That's why we are making these demands. We are fed up. We want the company to at least think about us. We do very hard work. We work every day until Sunday. We don't get a rest. And we are exposed to illness.
A local association has decided to take the crisis into its own hands, trying to make the city air breathable and healthy again. Equipped with dustbins and shovels, dozens of its volunteers pick up the rubbish.
It's because we're patriots that we thought it was unacceptable to live in such a polluted environment. And that's why we're doing this. We're doing it not because we expect anything. We're doing it because we're the children of this country and we love this country. No one can love this country better than we do.
But despite the volunteers' best efforts, Brazzaville is still overflowing with rubbish. Residents are hoping and praying for a swift end to the crisis. Discussions between the sanitation company Averda and its employees are ongoing. The company's directors declined to answer our questions.
Stay tuned to France 24.